Hey.
Do it. Do you need another cable?
Why? Welcome to Mead Talk. Mead Talk. Thanks so much for showing up tonight for the Mead Talk. Mead Talk is a place where we get to gather together and drink the ultimate drink, mead.
Mead.
Now, in order to, and we talk, I guess that's part of it.
We do talk.
So we don't just drink mead, but we talk. But in order to enter the realm of Mead Talk, you must consume at least 3 glasses of mead.
Tres.
Why? Because we believe that it dissolves the filters of the mind, allows us to speak freely what we think and feel. If we have feelings, you know.
Yes.
Those
If we
are
have
for women. The feelings are for women, right?
Yes, right.
Anyways, so we enjoy mead and we enjoy talking. We believe that it's important to talk about subjects that matter and even subjects that don't matter, you know, just things. It's important to talk about things so that we don't go to war over ideas that we're scared of, or we don't take things too lightly that need to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
It goes both ways, I think. But we have the infamous. I was gonna say, do we have a nickname for him?
I mean, what?
I
you
have
don't really
a
need a
nickname
nickname
for the other guy.
I mean, it's Bo. Like,
Well, it was the law for a long time.
Was it the law?
It was. Yeah, it was.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to sound stupid.
The law. What we need is for him to look at us and go, "I am the law."
No, I'm not going to do that. Although I appreciate the invitation, I'm not going to do it.
You know, I mean, it's there. I'm not comparing you to Sylvester Stallone in Judge Dredd. Movie reference, by the way.
already. Not even
I'm not
a
nearly
minute
as
in.
handsome as that man either. So, like, we can't. Do we really go that level?
Yeah, I mean, but we're giving you the opportunity, though, to compare you to him. Look at you, Bo.
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, so we'll just say Bo, and I think I first initially introduced you as a constitutional lawyer, which we had that discussion when we first started on the Constitution.
Yep.
Now we're into the Bill of Rights all the way to the 11th through 14th, I believe, tonight.
Yeah, we're going to skip the 12th because nobody really cares about the vice presidency.
Okay.
Because
that was what basically the president and vice president elects have to be from different states is basically what
pretty
it
much,
says.
yeah. There isn't a ton of controversy over the 12th Amendment, so nor is there a lot of understanding. But really, when you get into it, the 11th, the 13th, and the 14th, and we're only really going to be able to get into about half of the 14th because it's so robust.
Yeah.
There's so much information and so much controversy there.
So what you're telling me is not every amendment is made equally.
None of them are. and if we're really going to be honest with one another here, the 11th Amendment is probably the most controversial and the most illegal amendment we have.
But the 13th is one that people don't understand, and that is that's the abolishment of slavery.
Well, so the abolishment of slavery,
except for states or federal.
We haven't gotten to
slave.
the 13th yet.
I know we're at
right.
11, skipping 12.
We're gonna.
But that's essentially we're scraping over the top.
So the slavery issue basically decapitalized slavery, and what I mean by that is slavery is not illegal, except for the government.
Yes, exactly. That's what the 13th is.
Right.
An individual cannot own another person.
Right, but the government can.
Yes. Essentially, if you're in the military or you're incarcerated, then you're government property.
No, well, I mean, the military, you're absolutely government property, but
You sign your rights away.
But if you're incarcerated, you're also government property until you are deemed back into society.
No, you're not government property, but you are deemed under the 13th Amendment a slave to the state.
Okay, so I was going to say, it's about as close as you can get.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, in textual sense, slave labor
Yes.
or incarcerated labor is
Right.
textually the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's permitted under the 13th Amendment.
Yes.
So, in actuality, when you go to prison and you go to like a chain gang or something like that, you're well within the 13th Amendment. It's slavery. And
Yes,
it's allowed.
it is.
Now, they still have to pay you for it.
Right.
So it's not like...
Very minimal compensation.
Oh, yeah. You get like a quarter or some craziness.
Wait, let's jump back to 11. So 11.
You wanted to go straight into
Yeah.
the 13th.
Well, I mean, it's a
And we
pretty...
can go
it's-
there.
Yeah. So the 11th,
So the 11th is interesting.
a outside party cannot sue
Well, no, hang on.
state,
Let's
federal.
go back up.
Okay.
So let's read the 11th Amendment.
There we
right?
go.
All right.
The text says that the amendment states that the judicial power of the United States does not extend to lawsuits brought against a state by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of a foreign state.
Yes.
Now, let's go the history of the 11th to understand what the 11th actually says.
But that actually happens.
What?
That amendment actually happens. There are individuals and foreign states that sue individual states.
Yes. You can sue a state in certain contexts.
Yes.
You can't get money out of a state.
Basically, it's a slap on the wrist for them. Don't do this. You're bad.
It's not necessarily a slap on the wrist per se. Like, you can file for injunctive relief, right? So you
Right.
can tell a state, you can file a lawsuit in a federal court and say, federal judge, tell the state, knock it off. You
Right.
can't
Yeah.
do it.
Right.
And if you have standing and you win your argument, the federal judge, even at the trial court, says, hey, state, governor, or legislator, knock it off. You can't do it. Sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
And that's the law. So but when you look back at the 11th Amendment and how it began, it got ratified in 1794.
Mm-hmm.
What had happened just previously to 1794? I'll
How
give you a hint.
previously?
1776.
I was about to say
gonna
we
say-
just formed the country.
Yeah,
Right.
We
Yeah,
just
like-
beat the British.
And the Bill of Rights constitutes the first, 10 amendments?
Right.
Yeah.
So the 11th Amendment was the first one.
So basically, they said, "Hey, Britain, you can't come after us
No, actually,
in
opposite.
lawsuits."
It was, hey, American citizens,
Okay, you can't sue Britain.
no, you can't sue us. Even though we took all this money in grants and loans from you for the
that makes
Revolutionary
sense.
War,
Yeah.
and now you want us to pay up.
So that kind of jumps.
we
to
don't want to pay up, and therefore we're going to create the 11th Amendment
Those criminals.
and make it illegal for you to sue us.
That makes sense.
And that's what they did. So
That's
when
right.
you want to talk about
Because back then it was a lot more state as opposed to what we deal with now in
Didn't
federal.
Abraham Lincoln do something very similar in the
he
Civil War?
Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, right? Which means the body of, bring the body forth,
Yeah.
right? So in it's a criminal statute which says under the due process provisions of what we now would consider ancient law, like Latin law.
Yeah.
Right.
Habeas corpus is a Latin term, means
Yeah.
bring the body of. So when you are in a criminal matter, even some civil matters, well, they have changed the habeas corpus laws so much. We'll just stick to criminal because civil is just insanely ridiculous to even try to articulate. But basically what it meant was what Abraham Lincoln did was suspended habeas corpus, which is a great writ, and it goes to the front of the line. Everybody else gets set aside for habeas corpus. That is what gets heard first. So in the national, quote-unquote, national emergency that was the Civil War,
Yeah.
he suspended habeas corpus so that he could get POWs. and that they
Gotcha.
could not get a trial.
Gotcha.
Whether right, wrong, or indifferent, it didn't matter. Once habeas corpus was suspended, your constitutional rights, your human rights, your fundamental alienable rights are gone, period. And that's what Abe Lincoln did.
Sounds a lot like martial law.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit further than martial law, right?
Yeah.
So martial law is applied to society as a whole, whereas a habeas corpus issue is down to the individual, right? So it's no longer
Interesting.
like mob rule or societal norms or standards. It's a direct attack on a select few individuals, and it was orchestrated and it was carried out,
Wow.
period.
Well, so the 11th Amendment.
So the 11th Amendment, we go back to that, right? So in a lot of people think that you can't sue the state, right? Every state has a clause in their constitution that says they can't be held liable. Well, under the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, it says, yeah, not so much. You have state, you got to pass your laws in accordance with this Constitution. That's why every state has a Constitution.
Right.
Right? In essence, it's because originally the U.S. Constitution only applied to the federal government. And we haven't got there yet because we haven't got to the 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause and Due Process Clause, which then incorporated the first 10 amendments into the states.
I told you about the story
Yeah.
about my friend who went to Washington, D.C., and pulled the Washington State Constitution.
Yes, you've
and
told me
entered
that.
it into evidence. And
Yep.
it was, they had like faked their Constitution. There were some things in there that weren't.
Weren't legitimate
Yeah.
because
And
it wasn't in the congressional archives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild.
It's pretty awesome. That's some next level thinking right there.
It really is.
I'll be right back. I'm going to get a refill.
Go to the
and use
Library of
bathroom.
Congress and pull this, and we're gonna have fun in court.
Oh yeah. Well, it's pretty amazing to me that they would try to do that, you know. Mm-hmm. But
Well, I mean, just think about it. Take current events, super current. Like within the last 2 weeks, you've got UAPs, UFOs, drones flying over New Jersey, right? You have the state authorities, the governor's office, the state intelligence agencies, so on and forth, saying, we don't know what the hell it is.
yeah.
We have no idea. It's not an issue. It's not a threat. So on and so
Wink,
forth. Right. Wink, wink. However, simultaneously to this, like parallel to this, you've got a guy that kills the CEO of a United Healthcare that they found at a McDonald's 2 states away,
Yeah. Supposedly.
allegedly.
I mean, you look at the face and you're like,
Well, no. Let's just look at it face value
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Right.
Like if it's
You
legitimate.
can find a single human being geographically 2 states away eating a Big Mac.
And you don't know what an SUV-sized drone is.
Yeah.
Multiples of them flying over the East Coast.
And you're surprised when people ask. You're like, whoa, dude, I've never seen that. What?
What?
You're
What
like,
are you talking about?
yeah, you want
I
me to
flew
believe.
over one in my helicopter and I didn't see it. I'm just.
It's the weirdest
What
thing.
is-
I
what
took
is
my
that?
private jet out of fucking Newark, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's just not there.
I've been seeing reports of them over in Dallas.
You know where you haven't seen them? Here in Alabama.
So, yeah, I saw some funny posts of them.
There's some shotguns that are loaded, prepared.
Dude, so I don't really care if it's illegal to shoot down a drone.
You should. It should be sport.
I'm gonna do it anyways.
So here's the funny thing.
No, those weren't my rounds. What are you talking about?
Right. I mean, prove it, first of all.
Yeah,
But secondly, if under the Alabama Constitution, well, really, it's a legal principle all in all. When you own a piece of property, you own it, in theory, from where you stand to God's taint into Satan's taint,
Yeah,
right? So
I like that.
above to the heavens, below to hell.
yeah.
If you cross my plane, technically you're trespassing.
Yeah, and I have.
If you're trespassing with unknown intent, how is it not self-defense to shoot down a drone?
Right. So
How do you know? Because we all have YouTube. We know that the United States military has drone capabilities of lethal munitions.
Well, and I'm going to start putting no trespassing signs on the top of trees, so when Google takes their next picture,
That's awesome.
like,
You
no,
have
I've
been
got them
warned.
facing up. They can see them.
Yeah, I'll go argue that one.
Yeah.
Call me.
Yeah.
We'll get it taken care of.
Right. Yeah, it's been, that whole ordeal has been nuts. But, you have some people coming out and saying from high-level officials, this is Iran with their mothership that worked with China to produce these technologies, and they're parked over on the East Coast.
Well, yeah,
let me jump in real quick. I'm
High-level
gonna say
military
this.
officials.
I don't
saying
think it
that.
matters who it is. If you've got a drone, I don't care if you're the U.S. government. I don't care if you're the Iranian government. I don't care if you're the Chinese government. I don't care if you're Russian government.
I don't care
if
if
you
you're
got a
Bob
drone
next door.
over my land, I'm gonna shoot you down. I don't care who you
You
are.
had to put a dip in for that one.
He did.
Yeah, I do.
He knew this was coming.
It's getting deep here.
He's
We were
like,
just talking about that. And I said I'm going to put no trespassing signs on the top of my
Yeah.
trees.
So
Face it upward.
Here's the funny thing about shooting drones out of the sky. It's called the open fields doctrine.
wait, but hold on.
Hang on, hear me out.
Okay, I'll let you finish, and then I've got
Yeah.
something to say about that because this is all government-related BS.
Yeah, well, so now you're going to make the argument of a First Amendment right to speech, or even Second Amendment right to protection.
I won't even bring up an amendment.
Well, you have to, because if you're talking about your right to your property, then you've got to base it somewhere in law.
Yeah, but law is practice. But let me compare. Go ahead and do what you're gonna. I'm gonna compare
argument
the
of law is
government with
practice.
us. I'm gonna compare It is. I'm gonna compare
Yeah.
the government
Laws
with
can be
us.
changed.
So go ahead. They can
They
be.
change all the time.
They do.
Just how much money do you have and how bad do you want it?
Exactly.
Is it worth your life?
Trump told Hillary that back in 2016.
And she still hadn't been arrested.
Right.
But anyway, back to flying a drone over somebody's property. It's just like a trespass, right? The best way to think of it as a simple trespass. If I'm out near Matt's land, and I don't know it's Matt's land, and I'm just trucking through the woods, right? I know that I'm going west, so I sleep all day until the sun starts going down, and I'm like, obviously the sun's setting in the west. I'm walking west. Don't know where the hell I'm going. I'm just walking, right? Dodging trees and not getting hit by trucks. Well, then I come across Matt's land. Unbeknownst to me, it's Matt's land, and I traverse his land. Can Matt shoot me for being on his land?
No, you gotta be trespassed.
Well, if I'm on his land without permission, it would be a trespass, would it not?
Yes, but you have to be informed that you are trespassed. And
Well,
then
if
law
he
has
sees
to get
me and
involved.
says, "Hey, get off my land,"
Hey, you're trespassed. Get off my land.
get off my land.
Yes.
And I say, "Hey, man, I'm just walking. Like, I'm not bothering nobody. I'm just trying to get from point A to point B." Can he shoot me at that point?
No,
Right, because
he
I
has to
don't pose,
inform you first.
I don't pose a threat to him,
Right.
or his land. Even though while I may be physically walking on it, I don't pose a threat. Therefore, even though I'm trespassing on it,
Yes.
I'm not doing any damage. Therefore, it wouldn't rise to the level of self-defense. Right? I think we can all agree to that. Like,
Right.
It's a simple trespass. Like, yeah, dude, while you're on my land, like, you didn't deserve anything.
Right.
You know,
Hey, do you need
be
an
about your way.
escort? Go ahead. I'll follow you. I've
Right,
got
right.
stuff.
It's the same thing applies to the sky, right? That's why you can't shoot at an airplane flying over.
Yeah.
While technically you own the land
Yes.
to God's taint and to the devil's taint.
Which, from what I understand, is debatable because if you have certain minerals or something on your land,
well, I mean, you
depending
got
on how
mineral
deep
rights.
it is.
Mineral rights.
yes, but that can be disputed per the government because it's the government.
No,
but
no, that's the law. Unless you sell mineral rights, and what you sold those mineral rights, so they're no longer yours, even though they're underground. But if you don't sell those rights, they are yours.
Yeah.
They cannot be
Unless they're in
it would
your
have to be fought
deed.
in court because the society we live in. Let's go.
Well,
Let's
you'd
go
have
to.
to figure out that somebody horizontally drilled onto your land.
Let's
to
go
take
to
your
Beverly
property.
Hillbillies. Okay.
Yeah,
You
the-
shoot something into the damn
clampets.
ground, and and black gold shoots up. Guess what? Somebody finds out. Guess who the government's going to come after? They're going to claim it's theirs.
No.
Oh yeah, they will.
Oh, they can claim it till the cows come
Yes,
home.
and for the majority of the time, they're going to drain every penny you got for you to
No.
prove that it's yours.
No.
They can't just willfully like come onto your land. And
Really?
start taking
Okay.
it.
Do y'all remember what's his name? God, it was a few years ago.
BLM?
More than a few years.
No, it
ago.
wasn't BLM. It was out in I want to say it was in the Nevada area.
You're talking about
The guy that like
What's his
brought
name?
together all
Guy.
the people.
Yes, that brought together all the ex-Marines and ex-military and had
that
the
was
FBI.
the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was thinking something else.
No, not
Black
that-
Lives
not
Matter.
that bullshit.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no.
Bureau of
But
Land
yes,
Management.
and it was an actual, well, damn near
It was
war.
a standoff,
Yes.
right? And that was because it was over grazing rights, right? So
From what I understand, the Chinese wanted his land. The government said you can have it, and he said no, fuck off.
no, that's not what happened. So I read the transcript of that case because I have access to it, and I get
You get bored.
I got bored, and I wanted to know what actually happened.
Right.
Because if you listen to the media, they'll tell you one thing. They'll tell you whatever spins and narrates the story.
So I have to know right now, was he in the right or were they in the right?
They both were.
That's confusing. Why are you confusing me, Bo?
I mean, you want me to lie to you?
No, I want you to explain if you can.
So the way it works, it kind of goes across several different areas of law to get to the conclusion, right? So in what was happening was, oh God, I gotta get his name real quick. Give me a second.
Bundy, yes.
Bundy, the Bundy Ranch standoff.
Yes.
What was happening was Bundy owned quite a bit of acreage in Clark County, which I believe was in Nevada. Yep, it was in Nevada. It was northern Nevada, Idaho. So it was where the two states combine. And when two states interject, the Bureau of Land Management will own certain sections of it, right? So what happened was his cattle had been grazing on BLM's land for years. And he was moving them from pasture to pasture. He had a contract with BLM to do this. Well, BLM decided all of a sudden, like, we don't like it, be gone. And he was like, no, wait a minute. We've been doing this for years. This was our business transaction. And under the business law presumption, we're allowed to keep doing this because this is what we've been doing for so long. So we don't need a new agreement because we've been doing it for 15, 20 years at this point. And that's what the argument arose out of, right? So Bundy was right in saying, look, I'm moving these cattle. It's preserving the land. I'm doing everybody a favor. I'm keeping my cattle happy. I'm growing, hay or alfalfa or whatever over here. And then I'm rotating them like I've done for 20 years, 25 years. And I think it was actually longer than that at that point. But what the government came back and said was, we reserve the right to cancel it at any time. Which might have been true, and I think it went well back into the 19th century, 20th century. Like, I think it started around 1890 that was going on. So for like 75 years, this had been the arrangement that the Bundy family had had. And all of a sudden they were like, nope, you're done. And he was like, yeah, that's not how it works. So what the federal government was saying is like, well, we're going to shoot your cattle. And I was like, no, that's my personal property. That's my chattel, right? All those cows were personally his. It's personal property. You ain't killing them. If you try to kill them, we're going to have a problem. And that's where that standoff really arose. And that's where all the Marines and ex-Marines and Army and snipers and stuff like that that had rallied around it. So there was misinformation on both sides. It's not necessarily disinformation, but misinformation, trying to bolster each side's position. And it ended up working out for Bundy in the end. Because of that prior existing business transaction. They've been doing it for so long, the court said they can continue to do it because you did it for a century, man.
I thought they eventually chased him down and shot him.
No, they didn't.
No, I think you're thinking of Waco. Or Ruby Ridge.
No, Ruby Ridge, I think, up in Oregon.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Ruby
that's
Ridge
different.
was totally different. And
that was an execution.
That was a massive screw up on the FBI's part.
That was an execution. That's all it was. Strictly an execution. That's all it was.
Yeah, I think the FBI sniped his wife and his son.
Yeah. No, the FBI agent walked up to him with his hands up when he got out of the vehicle, shot him in the head.
Now he didn't die.
Yes, he did. They executed him. Shot him in the head.
I think that's the guy in Waco that you're thinking of.
No, Waco was a different situation.
Waco was interesting too.
Yeah, Waco was very interesting because there's a lot of constitutional laws that were broken with Waco.
Well, in Ruby Ridge,
which Ruby Ridge
is, I guess, Constitution on fire with that one.
Ruby Ridge is the modern Waco in that sense, because Waco.
Ruby Ridge happened before Waco.
No,
was it after?
Yeah.
Waco was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
It was like in the 80s,
70s, 80s?
70s, 80s, yeah.
Because they had M16s, and that's we're talking Vietnam War era.
And you saw the glasses that guy wore.
Yeah.
They were like Dad's old glasses.
Yeah.
So Ruby Ridge was in 92.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 20 years after, something like that.
Waco was in 93.
What?
It was right after.
No way.
Yeah.
Never argue with a lawyer.
Right after.
Never argue with a lawyer.
It was it was so close. That's what drew so much scrutiny to the FBI because it was Ruby Ridge that started it off, and then Waco. They tried to double down on those guys, and that's what ended up killing all those people.
I thought there was something that happened just within the last 10 years.
There was.
No, Waco was in the 90s.
No, I'm not talking about that, but there was something else.
There was something I remember because I remember seeing the photos of the SUV pulled off to the side of the road.
No, that was the Bundy standoff. That happened in 09, 11.
I want to say it's different. It was over. I want to say it was up in Oregon because somebody had a stash in Oregon, and it was somebody they were arguing with. It may have been the ATF.
But it was the ATF that shot him.
And that they just walked up to him with his arms out of the vehicle, hands up, and just executed him.
I know what you're talking about.
You remember?
Yeah. That was just a few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, it's escaping me right now.
But it was on the news. It was
with
big.
The Bundy thing.
No, that was totally.
No, it was different. It was like a Waco thing where he had a stash pile of firearms and shit, and they didn't like it, and they executed him in front of his family.
Let me see.
I don't know where we got off on all this, but
it's just Mead Talk.
It does boil down.
Yeah,
it's all within the realm of the 11th Amendment because you know what also comes out of the 11th Amendment? Qualified and sovereign immunity.
And judicial.
Yeah.
Judicial.
Well, judicial, and then they extended it to the executive.
Yeah.
Right? So all of your bureaucrats.
Don't mind us. We're just
don't mind you.
Food.
They're just eating phenomenal po' boys from Moe's. Like, good Lord, man, that looks amazing.
It is amazing.
You're just so diligently over here. Here's your fries.
Nothing like a ribeye po' boy.
Go ahead and get you into a coma right here. Good Lord.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this.
If I can get some ranch, that'd be awesome.
I gotta send a picture to Hannah, dude. She's gonna love this shit.
But and it goes silent on the radio.
Yeah. Let me take up. Hang on. I gotta send Hannah a picture of that.
Oh yeah. I don't want to dig into the po' boy because I'm gonna have to set my mic down.
I know. We kind of got to. I'll eat it, but it's probably gonna be after the show.
I'm probably gonna eat all the steak before I get to the bread.
All right.
So good.
No, it's fine. I'll take over. So, not a big deal. When you're talking about 11th Amendment, so it extends to Like, you can't sue the state for monetary damages, no matter how bad the state screws up, to a degree, right? You can't go after the officers. You can't go after the executives of the state, right? Because it's presumed that they're operating under the 10th Amendment of sovereign immunity, right? And the 10th Amendment doesn't, and we discussed that last time, was state sovereignty. 11th Amendment is judicial sovereignty, right? So you can't sue the judge, right? Because the presumption is the judge is the law. Whatever the judge says the law is. Now, you can disagree with that until the cows come home, but, I mean, they're the arbitrator, right? Yeah. They're the ones that you make the argument to, or, the attorney does, or, even the pro se guy does. And there's been tons of guys, like your buddy that went to the National Archives to pull the Constitution. He was a pro se guy, wasn't he?
I don't remember.
I believe he was. Yeah. And that's, I can't tell you how many people in law school that I had, how many professors that I said, like, if you go up against a pro se guy, you better have your boots tied on tight, because they're going to hand you your butt. Mm-hmm. Because that's, the only area of law that they're really concentrated in, and they know it like the back of their hand. Mm-hmm. Whereas, when you go to law school, you know everything from torts to contracts to commercial law to evidence to criminal law. They teach you a little bit of everything, so you don't know anything. And then you get into the Constitution, and they go, look at this document, 7,700 words, and you don't know a single thing about it. Because while it's written in English, it certainly doesn't mean what you think it means. And that's where it goes on to, like, the 13th Amendment, and it's a kind of a good segue into the 13th Amendment, right? So everybody thinks.
Well, what about the 12th?
We already said we're not talking about the 12th because nobody cares about vice presidents. The 12th Amendment, all it did was solidify the position of the vice president. That's all it did.
That's all it did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, it's
moving on.
Yeah, it's not controversial in any way, shape, or form. It's like, this creates the office of the vice presidency. It does a couple other things, but it's really inconsequential to it all, right? But then we roll into the 13th Amendment, and that's where the 11th Amendment gets a lot of its power, and the 13th Amendment kind of solidifies it, because we all know that the 13th Amendment allegedly abolished slavery. I make the argument that it did not abolish slavery. It simply made it legal under different contexts or pretenses. So the text of it is, and there's some key words that we need to pay attention to, is neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, because we had slavery in the South, but we had involuntary servitude in the North, right? The people coming through Ellis Island, right, coming into New York. The only way that they could secure passage was to give it a certain indebtedness to whoever procured their passage, right? And then they made it to the point where there was no way it was humanly obtainable for them to ever become free, right? So involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime. Well, now, wait a minute. That's interesting. Did you know that there are 1.6 billion, and I say that with a B, billion laws on the books in the United States of America where you're alleged to be free? 1.6 billion laws for which you can be locked up for in a free society.
Yeah, I saw a book not too long ago. It's like 3 felonies a day. Mm-hmm. Like the average American commits 3 felonies a day, according to the federal government.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Easily. You speed, that's a felony. Well, depending on how fast you go, right? It could just be like negligence per se, which would be a misdemeanor, right? So a traffic ticket. But, except for a punishment as a crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, right? So now you're either under the 5th Amendment due process or you're under the 14th Amendment due process. But being that we're at the 13th Amendment, the 14th hasn't quite been created yet. Therefore, the first 10, or first 13 rather, are not applied to the states. It's only to the federal government. Shall exist within the United States. Well, the United States is a corporation in and of itself. Mm-hmm. right? It's part of the union, or it is the union's delegate. But it doesn't compromise or compose of the 50 states. The United States is in of itself a separate entity, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Now that right there is what kind of starts tipping towards the 14th Amendment, right? Because every state is subject under the Supremacy Clause to be within their jurisdiction. But what ended up happening is, after the 13th Amendment was passed, it obviously abolished slavery and indentured servitude, which is fine, great, and grand, right? You know, the South lost the Civil War and had to give up the slaves, which was the driving component of the South's economy. The North lost their slaves too, but they didn't call them slaves, they called them servants. So what ended up happening was economies crashed. And people had to start taking care of their kids in their house up north, and they didn't like any of that crap, because God forbid you have to be a responsible human being with offspring and, you know, property. So what they ended up doing was, prior to the 13th Amendment's ratification, there were not that many laws, right? You had your old common law laws like murder. Right. Everybody knew that murder was wrong, and if you committed murder, you were going to get punished. You know, I think and my criminal law is a little rusty, but I think there's like 12 core criminal law, right? So it goes from murder all the way down to forgery, right? So if you forge your signature, that's a crime, right? It's not a civil crime. It is a criminal crime.
Right.
So what they ended up doing was they had to figure out how to supplant economies, and in doing so, they discovered, upon reading the 13th Amendment, said, well, wait a minute. It says it's abolished except for punishment for a crime. Well, if we just make more crimes, we can find more people guilty, and then we can get our economies back up and going and still using the same practices that we've been doing. And that's basically what they've done. Now, they've taken it up to the next level in the 21st century, where they have made fines so absorbent that you can never pay them off. And when you can't pay them off, what ends up happening is you end up going to jail. So it's not a debtor's prison per se, even though the reason you're going to jail is because you couldn't afford the fine, right? So in essence, you are a debtor because you couldn't afford the crime. What they did was a slight play on words, if you will, and they say, well, you defied the court. Therefore, you're in contempt of court. Therefore, you're guilty of a crime. Now go make us our money.
Does that sovereignty not extend to the individual, only to the state?
So, are you asking like under like the sovereign citizen theory?
Yeah, I guess.
So the Constitution doesn't give individual sovereignty. So in order to understand sovereignty, you kind of got to go back to the traditional sovereignty under monarchs, right?
Yeah.
So in doing that, you have to recognize that there are, like, have you ever read The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli?
I have not.
Oh, man, that's a phenomenal book. You want to see warfare at its finest? Like class warfare. Like, that's a classy man right there. Dude was brutal. Man, so a prince, the premise of The Prince by Machiavelli is how to take over principalities, right? So what we would now call municipalities, right? So when you go back, 1,500 years, a municipality was merely a principality, right? And you had to have a ruler. So in a principality, you'd have a lord, or this is subsequent there too, right? Now we have a mayor, right?
Right.
The mayor of our city is the functional equivalent of a lord in a principality, right?
Kind of how Roman Empire was set up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's principled off Roman law,
Yeah.
right? Society is based off what Rome did because they did it right. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what we got, and that's what we got to work with, whether you like it or not. Take it up with the tree, because that's what we got. But what Machiavelli basically said was, in order to run a principality in a state of compliance, you had to make the people fear your hand. So what he did was, the lord of this principality hired a thief to steal from the castle. Hired him, caught him, took him to the town and beheaded him. Right? It was orchestrated. The prince or the lord or the prince or whatever orchestrated the theft. Caught him, beheaded him so that the pupils would fear him. Gangster.
Yeah, like
Just like that gangster Santa right there.
Yeah. Right. But when, and I mean, that book it's a play-by-play on political theology, right? On how to get individual jurisdictions or principalities to create a feared class. So
Everyone moves on fear.
Huh?
I said everyone moves on fear.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So when you turn into what we have now versus like debtor's prisons, right? Debtor's prisons have been outlawed for decades at this point. You have to switch it up and create new and inventive ways to increase the flow of money. Because whether you like it or not, every jurisdiction thrives on money. Like a city is just like Jesus. All-knowing, all-powerful, just sucks at money and just needs more. That's why your taxes are always going up. That's why we're paying more taxes. Omnipotence only goes so far.
Yeah.
But that's what I was. Go ahead.
I was so this is a little bit off the track, not so much, but so the United States is a corporation. What if I don't want to be an employee?
Move. Well,
Okay.
You're not an employee. You're subject to.
But is
So that-
our
so
is
that
our
gets-
social security number not an employee number for the federal government?
So there's some theories out there, and I can't responsibly confirm or deny the rumors, right? Whether I subscribe to the theology of it or not is kind of immaterial. What I have read is it's merely a benefits number. But now you look at the historical context, and I think that the the 34, the New Deal. For some reason, AOC's Green New Deal is in my head, and I'm like, that's not it. But it's the New Deal. The New Deal of 1934, right? That's what really established the Social Security Office. It was a knee-jerk reaction to the Great Depression, right? Where everybody was starving and they had nothing, and they were like, look, we need a social net. I think under the principles that were there at the time, that legislation should have been null and void from its inception and had never been allowed. Now, what happened is strictly political from there on out, right? Because I did a bunch of papers in college on the New Deal because it has never sat right with me, right? If you read the Constitution, even if you have a basic understanding of constitutional law, you can't read the the New Deal.
The New Deal.
And under the existing principles and go, this is a valid exercise of legislative authority under Article 1. Because it's not. What it did was forced everybody into this program, whether they liked it or not. And even under the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, that should have invalidated the New Deal outright.
Yeah.
But you know why it didn't? And this goes to Article 3. How many Supreme Court justices are required to sit on the Supreme Court? Required. Constitutionally required.
None.
That means there's no limit.
Right.
So traditionally it's been 9, right? So you got to split. You got to have an even number so that you can have a decision made. What FDR did was said, because the Supreme Court told him in confidence, well, kind of in confidence, they wrote him a letter and saying, hey, look, don't FOFA.
Right.
You're going to lose, and we're required to make you lose. And he said, okay, hold my mead.
Right.
I'm a pack it so much that I'll get it. Even though it wasn't legal, even though it wasn't socially acceptable, he said, you know what? The Constitution doesn't limit me. I can put 100 people on that court, and 99 of them agree with me, and therefore this is going to get done,
right,
whether you like it or not. So it put the court kind of what happened in the 70s with Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
It's almost identical when you look at the political landscape of the time, what was happening.
Yeah.
The court said, look, we can either destroy our legal legitimacy and do what we're required to do, what we swore to do, or we can give in and still maintain that to some degree. And that's what they did. So to say that it's, the Social Security number is more or less, a citizen identifier, has that what it turned out to be? Is that what the Patriot Act did? Most likely.
But I didn't opt in for it. It was just given to me.
Well, no, you had to apply for it. Just like when you have a kid, you got to apply for a Social Security number. Your parents did it to you.
Yeah.
Their parents did it to them.
But
their parents did it to them.
Here's my experience with that number and sovereign citizenship. You ready?
Yeah.
So I get pulled over in Calera. This is many, many years ago. I have an expired tag.
Mm-hmm.
By law, I'm not required to have a tag. By law, I'm not required to have a driver's license. We can get into that. That's fine. I have the right to travel in an automobile in the United States, period. It's in the Constitution.
By everyday means.
By everyday means.
Verbiage.
So
what's the difference between driving a car and riding a horse?
Exactly.
Words. Words.
Warrants?
Words.
Nothing.
Words.
Right.
That's the difference.
The social acceptable definition of an automobile and a horse.
Exactly.
That's the only difference.
When lawyers get involved, that's
when lawyers
the
get involved, people lose money, and
That's the
words
difference.
get played.
Yes.
You know what? Just slight sidebar for a minute.
Oh, I like the slide bar. Let's do it. Who's the judge?
I don't know. It was either in Jefferson County or Blount County, one of the two.
Yeah. Oh, both. Yeah.
I got a buddy of mine who does family law.
Yeah.
Huge contentious family law issue. Mom's got several attorneys. Dad's got several attorneys. Kids got guardian ad litem. He said there was 10 attorneys that were going in on this case. Jeez. So they, the clerk calls the case forward, and here comes 10 attorneys, and I guess whoever the attorney was on the previous case walked out, and he said, "Ain't shit getting done today," and it cost $7,000 for 45 minutes for 10 people to argue.
That's ridiculous. That's
and
America.
Guess what got done?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That's America.
Nothing. So, when lawyers get involved, it's going to be a bad day.
So pulls me over, expired tags. I'm not required to have tags.
Yeah.
Pulls me over. Can I see your license? Not required to have a license. I'm traveling. I'm trying to travel to my place of work.
Yep.
Okay. He didn't argue. He just came back and said, here's your ticket for no proof of insurance, expired tag, and no license. Cool.
Good on him.
See you at
See you in
court.
court.
Yeah. Show up to court. He's not there.
Thrown out.
No.
No.
I got threatened by the judge.
What?
Yes. I told the judge, I said, I don't know what kind of tyrannical...
Oh, you were in Calera.
I was in Calera.
Oh, that little podunk crap.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I told the judge, I said, I don't know what tyrannical bullshit you're trying to run, but where's my accuser?
Right.
Calls him. Hey, I have so-and-so here. Oh, yeah. He said he was he said something about he was a, and this is why I wanted to bring up the whole
He was a sovereign citizen.
Yeah, he said he was a sovereign citizen. Oh, you're a sovereign citizen?
That's not what I said.
That's not near what I said. I never said that. Well, we can go to the jury and you can go to jail. I said, are you threatening me?
Yeah.
No. I'm not threatening you, but most likely you'll go to jail. I said, that sounds like a threat to me. He said, no. I tell you what, I'll drop this, you pay this, and we'll be done. I said, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And he said,
This is also why I could never be a trial
And
attorney, because I would be like,
he looked at me, he
let's
said,
go.
excuse me, you're in my courtroom. I said, no, sir.
He's a municipal judge. It's not.
I'm in the courtroom for the people, by the people. I'm in my courtroom.
Did you know that probate judges are not required to be lawyers?
Yeah.
They don't even have to go to law school.
You know, I knew that.
I didn't
because
think
of-
any judge had to go to law school.
Yeah, they do.
Yes.
Really?
There are judges-
Circuit court and above
yes,
here in Alabama.
they have
yeah,
to
you
go to
gotta
law
have
school.
You have
A
to
law
have a
degree.
JD.
Yeah.
And you have to be barred.
Yeah.
Yeah, but probate judges here in Alabama, which is funny because they're the ones that are administering your estate.
And they're elected officials.
Well, yeah, they're elected officials too.
That's
but
what
yeah,
people don't understand.
They're not required to go to law school.
When they walk up into that courtroom and the judge says, you're in my courtroom, fuck you, you're an elected official.
Well, what's even more funny about that, right? So real estate law is by and large the most confusing area of law there is.
I've heard.
By and large. Like I took a year of real estate law. I don't want to do that.
Right.
It is insane. And you've got people that never even sat through, a real property seminar determining what your will says or what your trust. Well,
Yeah.
And this is why you got to have a trust, because
That's why I'm getting a trust.
I had actually, when I was young, and this is all about I really wish I knew now what I knew then, vice versa. I had a lawyer that we hired for the Hoover coming out of Iron Horse when
Oh,
it existed.
yeah. I love that story. It's great.
Yeah. And anyways, he at the time, yeah, he's a real estate
you know
lawyer
what?
now.
Yes.
He did criminal there, but he's a real estate lawyer now.
I'll take one. Hey, do
So,
we-
yeah.
Do please.
But he's a real estate lawyer now. He's actually doing really well in real estate.
Oh, dude, real estate law is super easy.
But it's his cup of tea. Like it is. Hey, wait, Darcy.
No, I mean real estate law, like doing contracts and writing.
Yeah,
deeds.
it can be very lucrative.
Oh, it's super easy too.
Yeah.
Well, writing a deed is I could write a deed in 5 minutes.
But there's some shit that gets really deep. That's like,
So I want to put together a dynasty trust.
Duck Dynasty.
No, a dynasty trust, one that survives many generations.
So you've got the rule against perpetuity. That's going to be the problem, right? So the rules against perpetuity is 99 years plus 21. Right here in Alabama, you can do 100 years. So what that means is you can have a trust, right? And you can set it down to your beneficiaries can be your kids. They can go their life. And you can set it up as like when they die, your secondary beneficiary is going to be their kids, right? Where you run into the problem is when you get into that 99-year problem. So thank you so much. The rules against perpetuity is an old English rule, all right? And basically says you can't own something for more than 100 years, right? Once you're dead and gone, you're dead and gone, and it moves on. However, you can transfer your ownership, your interest in it, right? Whether it be fee simple absolute or just simply fee simple, right? When you're married, it transfers in fee simple absolute, right? So it goes straight to your wife if you die, and then from there it goes to your heirs, right? Depending on if you've got a will, trust, however you want it set up.
Yeah.
But the rules against perpetuity is an absolute real thing. So what you got to do in order to survive that is you have to memorialize in your trust in 90 years. It has to be renewed under these specific things. If it doesn't get renewed under these specific things, then the trust dies. Right, so that's basically what a dynasty trust is, right? Yeah. So you're saying here's basically it's just like an LLC's operating agreement.
Yeah.
Right. You set out your principles and how you want everything administered, right? You want your beneficiary to administer it in certain ways, and then at a certain point, to not run into the rules against perpetuity, you say it has to be renewed.
Yeah.
And this person's heir has the authority to renew this trust under these guiding principles. If these guiding principles aren't adhered to, the trust is gone. Like, the law in of itself will dissolve the trust.
Yeah.
And that's how you do that.
That's good. That's good to know. I haven't formed it yet. I'm on the verge. But one of the things I want to incorporate into it is that the trust takes out a whole life insurance policy on every individual or beneficiary or heir.
Okay. I took trust in estates. It was one of the elective classes that I wanted to do because I wanted to get into elderly law.
Yeah.
Because I like trust and I really like sticking it to Uncle Sam and making Uncle Sam the poorest bastard I've ever run across.
Yeah.
So
life would be better.
I like it. I like it when the government's defunded. Not as a veteran, but it happens. I like my health care.
Yeah.
So having those things, like when I do pass the bar next year after, whenever that comes to bear, I plan on doing trust and estates on the side as like a secondary to whatever I do.
Well, I'll wait.
Because it's super fun. Like I did one for my family, and I put all my family's assets in it. So I got some practice with it, and I got one of the best trust guys in the States to look it over, and he's like, "Man, you knocked this thing out of the park."
Then I'll just wait until you're ready.
Yeah, man, I'll take care of it.
Hell yeah.
It'll take me a couple weeks, but
yeah, I mean, it was going to be within the next year, So.
Yeah, they're super simple. It's just getting a lot of documents in place
and me mostly deciding exactly how I want it to go. I would think is the hardest part.
Yeah, as a lawyer, I heard once you pass the bar and you start whether you hang your own shingle or you go work for somebody else, 90% of your job is filling out forms.
Yeah.
If people understood what attorneys actually did, they'd be super pissed.
I was actually on the attorney path. I was. Got out of high school, moved back here. I was on the Wallace State.
Oh, Wallace, yeah.
And I was told, because I've been told many a time, you're a great debater because lawyers debate. That's a part of their job is debating.
Well, you debate, you argue.
Yeah, you do. You argue, you debate. This is my point of view, and you have to understand it.
Well, and I told you why you don't call a lawyer a doctor, right?
Yeah.
Because they can't ever give you an answer.
Exactly. Because
although I did tell my family that they can refer to me as Dr. Parkinson now.
Right?
Like, you can call me doctor, it's cool.
But then I was, and at a young age, the family knew.
Or once I graduate and all that.
Knew lawyers and attorneys and so on and so forth. And they said, look, I'm going to be honest. Most of my life is paperwork. And I was like, eh.
It is. It depends on, what you do, right? So, like your real estate buddy.
Yes.
That's all he does is paper.
Oh, yeah.
It's pre-filled forms.
It's going. It's showing up. And
It's just like the mechanic, right?
right.
Like this story about the mechanic where the company hires a young guy and pays him $10,000 and he works like 10 hours and he can't fix the problem. Then they pay another $15,000 to another guy who works 6 hours, can't figure out the problem. Then a guy comes in, listens to it, takes out his hammer, hits a spot, and he's gone in 10 minutes.
Yep.
And then he gets a bill for $10,000. They're like, well, you were only here for 10 minutes.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, you know what? I knew what I was doing.
Yep.
And that's why, when you come across an attorney, and a lot of attorneys will charge like $250 an hour, right? That's pretty standard monetary, right?
Right.
But then when you get up to the attorneys, they're like, I charge $750 an hour. And it's kind of like sticker shock, right?
Yeah.
Because $750 an hour is a significant chunk of change.
Yes.
And your expectation of that is it better be done right the first time.
I'll be honest. That's, in my opinion, that's the difference in buying your groceries at Walmart and buying your groceries at Publix. One of them has better quality.
I'm going to go Aldi and Publix.
Yes.
All right, you want to go from
Yes.
$250 to $750 an hour?
Yes.
All right.
Exactly.
Yeah. You better be getting done right.
Yes.
And the attorneys that have been doing it for a while and know exactly what it is, and they have the connections. Because don't get me wrong, any idiot can read law. Once they figure out how it's articulated and what the words mean, anybody can make an argument.
Right.
So I'm pretty interested in trying to be as free as I can, right? And
Get out of an incorporated zone, like
so
the city.
I'm not, and I'm in a county, but I'm in Chilton County.
You know what blows my mind with Alabama, at least, and what makes me angry as a human being? I'm right there with you. Like, I want to be as free as humanly possible. Like, if you want to sit here and argue what constitutes what, brother, go for it. Have at it. Call me when the cows come home, right? I don't care.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't sit here and tell me what I can and what I can't do on my land. Now, if I own, 100 acres out in the middle of friggin' nowhere, and I don't want power run to my house, I don't want power run to my house.
Yeah.
But under the laws of Alabama, if you put a dwelling on a piece of property, it is required by law that you run power to that property.
That's why nobody knows where I'm at.
Right.
But also, I don't have any fixed dwelling right now, so. But I mean, I create all my own power and everything, so I don't want power around to my house. Why would I want power? The crazy thing is, though, how do Amish get away with it?
The Amish will sue the fuck out of anybody, and they win.
The Amish is what won the fucking election in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, no. In all honesty, I remember being in undergrad, taking constitutional law in undergrad, and I read so many cases. And of course, then and this is why I would love to go to Montevallo and teach constitutional law, because when I took it, I had no idea what I was doing. Right? You think that you're reading these cases from the U.S. Supreme Court, and you're like, oh, what did they say? Well, cool, yeah, you can read the holding, right, at the very bottom of the end of whatever. There is so much in a case from the U.S. Supreme Court, so much information you can get out of there if you know what you're looking at and how to read it. But the problem is, and I think they have this problem in and this is not a shameless plug for me, but a legitimate concern for people that are paying absorbent amount of money to get a quote-unquote college education. I'm sorry, but a political science professor, a PhD in poli-sci, who's never taken, doesn't have their Juris Doctorate, doesn't understand law.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that you got to go to law school to understand law. That's totally not true. But it sure shit helps, right?
Oh, yeah.
You get, you got 3.5 years. That's all you do. There is no, well, here's English 101.
In my opinion, law school is mostly learning the verbiage of law that's written.
Well, and how it
Well, no,
applies to certain situations.
how it applies, but understanding that the fact that it's written in English, but it does not mean the same thing that Webster says it is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a whole different dictionary.
It is a whole new different dictionary. All the words mean something different. And because the words mean something different, there's no way, as someone who doesn't understand that, can you read anything from the United States Supreme Court or any circuit court or whatever court and go, I know what that says. No, you don't.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Where or be out to. Like all the whereas or
But,
to
but
be
wasn't
out.
that done on purpose?
So, like, you've got the wheretofores, the hereins, like, the terms of art, so they say. But it's the dominion and control,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you have to go through history books to figure that out.
Well, no, you got to understand what dominion means in law. Because you go to Webster, dominion means control. No. Dominion means the ability to have possessory control. Okay, cool. Well, now what the hell's possessory control?
Isn't that why they say possession? Isn't that why they say possession is 9/10 of the law?
Yeah, that's a lie. You come with me with that bullshit, I'm going to have your lunch, and you're also going to pay my bill. But it's those things, right? It's the ability to have possessory control. But then you go, okay, cool. Well, if you say dominion and control, but dominion means to have possessory control, then why the hell would you say control? So what does control mean? Then you got to look that up, and then once you get down that rabbit hole, then you go, okay, these two simple words, dominion and control, actually means this paragraph of stuff.
Yeah.
And within this paragraph of stuff, there's 8 or 9 things that have to happen to show that you have dominion and control. Versus just saying, well, I have dominion and control. Well, how do you know you have dominion and control? Because you don't know what dominion and control means because you haven't satisfied these 9 things that you have to prove in a court of law to show that you have.
And have they ever been proved before? How were they proved?
Right.
How were they shown? All those different circumstantial things that apply to different.
And in all honesty, that's why you pay an attorney, right? You pay an attorney the $250 to $750 an hour. One, because they sat there in hell for 3.5 years, so that you didn't have to understand all these things. So that when somebody, an adversarial party, throws these things out there, they go, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not right." They missed that crucial element there in that paragraph, and because they missed that crucial element in the paragraph, no, you pay my client and you get the hell off their land.
Yeah.
And you leave them the hell alone because you didn't follow the law. Well, how do you know I didn't follow the law? Because here, in this case, in 1892, which has never been overturned and is still good on the books, it says you got to do X, Y, Z. And if you did A, B, C, well, guess what? You could not have done X, Y, Z under pure logic, right? And therefore, be gone. My client can sit on his 50 acres in the middle of nowhere with solar panels and chickens spinning fucking wind farms to deliver his power to run his washer and dryer, and you get the hell on. Be gone with you.
Yeah, so that's why I don't want them to really know where I'm at or what I'm doing. And I'm not going to tell anybody unless they come to my door. And
Oh, they will. Oh, Alabama Power knock down your door in a heartbeat. Once they realize that somebody's there, they'll be like, "Oh, you don't have a meter set." I'm like, you know what? Piss off.
Because I don't need a meter set.
Like, I'm not
But
here.
that's what I'm saying is, the Amish get away with it. So
Well, the Amish get away with it, and that
So
kind of
what-
goes back to what it was. The reason the Amish still get away with it is because they're a very close-knit community, and they have been doing it since the formation of this country, and they haven't changed anything.
so they're grandfathered in.
In essence, yeah.
Well, I'm Amish.
And the First Amendment allows you to ride in that right.
Yep.
However, just like the military, if you say, because I don't know how it was in the Army, but when I was in the Coast Guard and I was going through boot camp, they gave Sunday off, right? But you had some guys that were like, "Hey, look, man, my Sabbath is on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, I don't take Sunday off, I take Saturday off. Like, you can't make me work on a Saturday." And everybody's like, "Pound sand, kid. Get to work. Turn 2."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, you're not." So then they kind of had to prove where they sat on their religious thing, right? So like you say, well, I'm Amish. That's cool, great, grand. Prove it.
Yeah.
Like, what are the Amish traditions? Like, are you doing them?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying, hey, I claim this religious exemption and I don't actually practice it?
I didn't know it was
Same thing with, like, what happened with guys with beards. And I think it was like 10 years ago with, what do they call it? The head wrap?
Yeah.
Do-rags?
No,
The actual term.
Oh, turban.
Yeah.
Turban. Do-rag's different.
Do-rag turban.
Like, what head wrap are you talking
I think
about?
it was a chaplain, an army chaplain who had one. He was like, look, I think he was Muslim or something like that. And he was like, no, look, like legit. Like, I'm Muslim. This is my traditional headwear. This is what I'm going to wear. And the army was like, no, you're going to put on your ball cap like everybody else, soldier. Turn 2. And he was like, no, the hell I'm not. Let's take it to the courts. And the Supreme Court was like, nah, dog. He ain't wearing his ball cap. He's going to wear his little turban, put it in camouflage, give it to the man, and let him go.
Yeah.
So
Because he could prove that, like, it wasn't he was just simply saying it. Like, he was actually, doing the prayers. He followed the religious beliefs, so on and so forth.
yeah, and so what if I'm just a man of the land?
Then you're sovereign.
Then it's going to cost you a lot of money, Matt, and let's go.
You're my lawyer, right?
That's why I said it's going to cost you a lot of money.
That's what I figured out.
Because I'm going to have to research the hell out of that one and go, oh, shit, here we go.
I mean, I just don't understand how they can make me do anything unless they held me at gunpoint, which I will hold them at gunpoint.
So here, right? Then we don't got the Bundy Ranch. We got Matt's Ranch.
All the guns you lost in the boating accident.
It's called Sacred Projects,
Sacred Projects, gotcha. It's called
where all life matters.
It's called Blink, bitch. I dare you.
Look at the circle. Smile. Wait for the flash.
No, I get it. But, and one of the things that's always confused me as someone, who I guess you could, quote unquote, say a student of the law, public policy is by far the biggest cop-out I think I've ever heard of, right? So things could be textually against the law. It could be textually against history, right? And that's kind of where this saying that the Constitution's a living document, right? So they'll go, well, it's in the public's best interest. Well, now wait a minute. If it's in the public's best interest, are we now not under mob rule? But we swore against mob rule. That's why we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. But it's also why you've got all of your elected officials trying to convince everybody and their mother that we're a democracy.
We're a democracy, yes.
So because they're just too damn dumb to realize, like, no, while our voting portion is an indirect democracy, cool, great, grand,
Yep.
we are a republic.
And we still abide by a constitution.
We abide by our constitution because I can guarantee you every single one of these little city snowflakes, you go run up and bust them with a baton or something like that and be like, I've got a constitutional right.
Exactly.
I'm like, would you live in a democracy, son? You don't have a right.
Let's take it higher than that.
Yeah.
It absolutely pisses me off when a president, I don't care who the president is, says executive order. That is against the Constitution.
It's not. Not an executive order. No, it's not.
An executive order is against the Constitution.
No.
They have
it's
certain
actually
executive rights.
It's actually written in the Constitution. It's allowed under Article 2, under the executive. So what happens, and this is why we haven't seen Congress take a break in a long time, because they don't want to give the president that power, because it is textually in the Constitution that if Congress were to take a break, they don't have. So Congress has to approve everybody for cabinet positions, government positions, right?
That's what's going on right now.
Well, there's a reason the ATF can't make laws. The Congress has to approve laws,
Well,
but the ATF
no.
is still making laws.
No. So
No,
now
they're
you're
not
getting,
making
now
laws.
you're getting deep into Article 1.
Yeah, they don't make laws. They just
They
set
make
rules.
regulations.
Yeah.
No,
which
the
are
ATF
not.
is making laws.
No, they're not.
They're making
No,
regulations.
they're making laws.
No, they're not laws.
They're not laws. They're regulations.
No, they're
regulations.
not. I understand.
But Congress
if I can be-
gives them the authority to make broad regulations that act as law.
But Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there.
And that's where you have to draw that distinction, because they have to play by certain rules. Like, they don't have a choice. But what Congress has done is kicked the can so far that you can no longer discern that it's an actual can, and given the bureaucracy so much power. That's why you've got Musk and Vivek right now under the Department of Government Efficiency. Doge. Which made Dogecoin.
Yeah, I know, right? I wish I would have bought.
I bought that years ago at 2/10,000ths of a penny.
Yeah.
And it's at 50 cents right now.
I know.
And I bought a lot of it. I was a happy man. Anyway.
Well, I had 400 Bitcoin at one point.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, very.
Did you buy a pizza?
Yeah, one pizza. I sold it for like
$4.8 million.
I wish I would have. Yeah, I could have now.
Could have.
But I think I sold it for like, I don't know, $600 or something.
Oh, that's rough.
No, $1,600. I had $1,600, I think.
Hey, you made some good money off of it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it hit $100,000 last week.
Yeah, I know. That made me mad. It made me mad when it hit 20 grand.
Hold on, I'm getting to the
I bet.
ATF making laws.
So the ATF. All right, well, let's go back to the ATF making law.
So
the way it works is Congress passes a law.
And this is, we can talk about the bump stock, we can talk about the pistol brace, we can talk.
Well, so that goes back down to the regulatory power of the agencies. And in that, you have Congress that passes a law.
Yes.
Who gave the agency for which the law was directed the power to make a regulation to dictate what the law says, right? Because the law is so vague, it's so amorphous that the agency can take it and twist it and do whatever they want to with it. And that's where, like, the bump stock ban came out with the ATF. And, like, the designation of ghost guns, I think. I think the
Just
ATF.
the 80% that they hate.
Huh?
The 80%ers.
Right.
That's what they're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so it's not necessarily that the agencies are going overboard, which they are, but they're given the authority by Congress because Congress doesn't want to actually pass laws directing with issues.
But you say it there, the Congress is the one that actually has to pass the law.
They do pass a law, but they pass a law in such a way that it gives the agency the power.
So basically, it's a fat kid sitting on a couch saying, I don't want to make that decision. My mom's going to make the decision of what I eat for dinner, breakfast, lunch, and don't bother me with it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is basically what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is bullshit.
I don't disagree with you.
There should be no reason.
Most people don't disagree with you.
No, you're right. I mean, there's a reason we have a completely different form of government coming into place January 20th.
Oh, yeah.
Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that are going to be involved with this, the people that I've watched, that I know, that I've kept up with, it's phenomenal. Like, it's probably the single most awakening this country has had in decades.
You know, I agree. I agree with that. And I think that him losing 2020 was the best thing for us.
As much as it's been painful, I agree.
Because it gave him 4 years, because he wasn't a politician when he got into it in 16. And then when he got out in 20, he had 4 years to build relationships, and the Democrats just turned it into a steaming pile of dung.
Yes.
Right?
Go woke, go broke.
And he's coming back in, and he's got the entire world going, uh-oh. Well, I hope you made your money in the last 4 years because you're about to go broke.
Dude, like, fucking China backs off from Taiwan. They're like, I don't know if it's that important.
We changed our mind on that one.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really worth that. I don't know if that juice is worth the squeeze. Russia's like, we really don't want to fight Ukraine, So we'll back off. We'll wait till you let us know what we need to do. And then you got all kind of other countries like fucking.
Well, you got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is practically done now.
Hamas was like,
yeah, we're done.
I think we can come to an agreement.
But now Syria has fallen.
Did it?
Oh yeah.
Dude, I have been so busy lately. I have
It got
not even paid
overrun.
attention. Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now Israel is talking about taking over Syria.
What?
It's getting wild out there.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
I saw a thing a couple weeks ago where Russia threw some ICBMs at Ukraine.
Yeah.
Or Ukraine threw ICBMs at Russia. One or the other two. One or the other. And it was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, Putin has flat out said, I will nuke the shit out of you.
Right.
Like,
Well,
fuck are we going to find out?
But yeah, Biden allowed our missiles, long-range missiles.
And then they let them go. Mm-hmm. And it's like, really, you demented old fool?
Have a good night, man.
You too. We can that guy out of it.
Right.
You too.
You too, man.
Something about nuking Russia out of.
Oh.
Russia out of existence. Apparently, he's a
Well,
Ukrainian.
we're empty.
We are, and it's still early. It's only 9:30.
I mean, we're an hour and 20 minutes in.
Yeah,
So.
I ain't got to be at work for another 4 hours. I'm good.
Sweet.
Sweet.
I mean, so we still hadn't got to the 14th Amendment.
So let's get to the 14th.
So number 14.
What is the 14th?
The 14th is complicated.
You said that. We got off on a little bit of a track there, but there's a lot to all of that pertains to the 13th Amendment and everything that we were talking about in the articles. So that's good, at least.
Well, I mean, the 11th and the 13th, like, it requires you to break it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the 14th requires even more because it's so long. There are so many different provisions within the 14th Amendment. And this is when we finally start seeing the states become involved. Through the 14th Amendment, through the Due Process and Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, that's when stuff starts getting incorporated, right? This term of incorporation of the U.S. Constitution starts to get applied to the states, because prior to the 14th Amendment's adoption in 1868, the U.S. Constitution only applied to the federal government. Now, every state had its own constitution because it was required to have a very similar model of government, right? That's why every state has a governor, the chief executive. They have a legislature, so they've got a Senate and they got a House, and then they got the judiciary, right? Every single state mirrors the federal government for a very specific reason, because they were required to. But the way the courts had held it for the first practically 100 years of this country's existence was the U.S. Constitution only applies to the federal government, because that was the governing document. And the states had their own thing, right? It was that separation between states and federal government. So the 14th Amendment comes along and says, you know what? Nope, now it all applies to the states. The first 13 all apply to the states through the Equal Protection and Due Process Clause. Because if you notice that the 5th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, they both have the term due process. And that term had been delineated through the courts to mean that the due process under the 5th Amendment means it applies to the federal government, and the due process of the 14th Amendment applies to the states. Because it said it in two separate places, they had to figure out a way to figure that out, right?
But that applies to the laws for citizens. So if the state wanted to separate itself from the laws from the federal government, can they not do that? Because
they can. They can secede from the union.
Yes.
That's about the only way they can do that.
So with that, though, let's go to Texas.
Okay. Yeah, Texas is a big one because they've been threatening it for years.
Yes, they have. And
I'm pretty sure it was just on their ballot in November.
Yes.
Yeah, and they basically said if Trump didn't win, they were seceding.
They were
Yeah,
seceding.
They were
and
gone.
there were
They already
30.
had everything written up and everything.
Yeah.
I think there were 32, 33 other states that were behind them.
Yeah. Well, right now they got a thing with Nevada and or Idaho and Washington State. Like the eastern side of Washington State wants to be like,
Yes,
"You
like they
crazy
want to get out
They're
of
all
Washington
Republicans.
State and they want to go to Idaho.
Yeah,
I saw that.
They've
yeah.
already written it up.
Yeah,
and
they're like, look,
processes-
y'all are fucking crazy over here. We'd rather be on this side.
Well, it's because all the people in Seattle and Portland.
Yes.
There are so many people in Seattle and Portland that the people in the eastern side of the state, like
They don't
have
identify
no
with.
representation whatsoever.
Yes.
And they're the ones getting screwed because the cities are saying, "Oh, well, fuck them. We don't care."
They're
Right.
all the farmers and the
Yeah,
rural
exactly.
people.
But that goes to Texas, they told the federal government, hey, I know y'all have this whole issue with us having to pay a stamp fee for a suppressor. Well, you know what? Fuck you. If we manufacture it in the state of Texas and you live in the state of Texas, you don't have to pay a stamp and you can come get it from us. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, in my opinion.
Well, and that's I think it was a Firearms Act of 34 too,
NFA?
in the NFA,
Yeah.
which was in direct correlation with Bonnie and Clyde, if I'm not mistaken. Well, it wasn't just Bonnie and Clyde, but it was also
Yeah, it was what's his name up in Chicago?
Tommy.
Yeah, that had used the Tommy guns.
The Tommy guns.
Yes.
They're like, look, we can't be letting everybody have machine guns. 'Cause
Right.
We're getting mowed down everywhere.
Yes.
So, did you know that if you apply for a Title II, you give up your Fourth Amendment right?
Didn't know that.
100%.
That's bullshit.
100%.
That is
If you have a silencer,
bullshit.
if you have a silencer or an automatic weapon, you waive your Fourth Amendment right.
That is absolutely
If you just have it,
No, if
Well,
the
I mean,
government knows
if
about
you've
it.
got the stamp.
but if you have it,
Well,
and-
if you have it and you don't have the stamp, then you're most likely in violation of the FA.
yeah, but it's not a law, is it?
The NFA is
The
a federal
NFA is,
law.
yeah.
National Firearms Act.
Yep. I could pull up the specific statute, but
Basically says that you can't have a full auto.
Well, that's
if
that's
it's
where
pre-banned,
that's where this
unless it's it's
stamp tax
post-ban.
comes from.
Yeah.
Is from the law.
You can have a pre-ban without a stamp, which is 1982, on a full auto. But you cannot.
That's
have
why
a
you can't buy new full autos anymore.
Yes,
So how are
you
they allowed to
can
get
if
away
you got a
with that?
Class 3 and you have a stamp,
Well, in order.
but
to
you're
get
also
Class
going to pay
3, you gotta be a
$15,000.
manufacturer.
Yes.
Right.
Well, you just have to pay a fee.
Well, no, you got
It's-
to be to have a new one. You got to be a manufacturer.
Class 3?
Mm-hmm.
Like your FFA license?
Yes.
I mean, I know people that have it, and they're not a manufacturer.
No.
They may
They're-
not. They may not be a manufacturer, but they are
They have the
taxed
ability
as a manufacturer.
Yeah, you just have to pay the fee.
The fee.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
It's like
what the law
$5,000 a
is.
year, though.
Yeah.
Something like
it's
that.
I thought it was more than that.
No, it's not that bad.
$5,000 a year is not bad for.
No.
But that's where I was saying if you want a full auto, if you want an M4A1,
So the
it's
funny
at least
thing about
$15,000.
the delineation or the waiver of the Fourth Amendment when you get those stamps, you have to divulge to the government where that particular item is.
I lost it in a boating accident.
Right. So, like when you get a silencer, right? It'll say,
Right.
where is it? Where is it stored? And you say it's in in my garage in my gun safe.
Yeah.
Right. So to say that you waive your Fourth Amendment right is slightly an inaccurate statement. You waive your Fourth Amendment right to that specific location because
gonna
at
say.
any time they can say, you know what, Rob, you got the silencer. It's supposed to be here. Show it to me. And they can come in. They can go straight to where you said it was, and you got to open your safe and show it to them. If it's not there, then you're in violation, and then all hell breaks loose. So that's why I say you do kind of waive your Fourth
And
Amendment.
then I say, let's go to the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed.
Yeah,
I know,
How
trust
do they?
me.
How do they get away with
It's a battle.
allowing you, or
It's a battle.
taking away your ability to have any firearm that you choose?
NFA.
No. So how do they get around the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Time, money, and ignorance.
Yes. Well, time, money, and liberals.
Time and money go hand in hand. You got enough time to file the lawsuit, and you got enough money to file the lawsuit, because you got to find an attorney that's willing to file the lawsuit to go make the argument. They've tried. Time, money, and ignorance. You have to be the one that sits through and says, you're full of shit. That's not what it says. That's not what it means. The historical context of this is this, and here's why. And you got to make that argument. But you have to have enough people make that argument, because one person making that argument is not enough.
No.
You need to have 10,000 people make that argument. And you need to have 10,000 people make that argument in 100 different places.
But they do that, and it's an insurrection.
Well, no, it's not. Because if you challenge it through the legal venue.
I don't recall in the Constitution where it says if we don't agree with our government, we have to go through a legal venue.
Absolutely. The right to petition. First Amendment. You have the right to petition a grievance of your government. That's
Yes.
filing a lawsuit.
That's
That's what that means.
But if we go to the Second Amendment,
right. It doesn't supplant.
I'm not saying if we don't agree. I'm saying if the government is blatantly being tyrannical, where does it say we have to go through the judicial system?
No, you don't. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, of playing a giant game of fuck around and find out.
Right. That's
what it is.
And I
if you
understand.
Say that they're being tyrannical. You have two options. In all honesty,
get 10,000 people, show up to the government.
Hang on. Option number one.
Okay.
You file your lawsuit. Mm-hmm. Option number two. You get a sweet hoodie that says Luigi's free. Luigi Mangione. You walk outside their hotel room and you pop them in the street in New York.
Ba-bing.
Those are your two options.
I mean,
right? Your Second Amendment says you have the right to bear arms against a tyrannical government.
Yes.
Cool. I don't have a problem with it. The problem that I have with it, and I always have had a problem with it, is communication. How are you going to stop it? Because nobody jumped up and screamed, "What the fuck" at the Patriot Act when they should have in 2001.
They absolutely should have.
But they didn't.
No. Because they incited
That's where the
fear.
ignorance was.
They incited fear in everyone.
What'd I say?
And that's
Time,
how
money
and ignorance.
That's how they get it, is fear.
But I don't want to participate in that.
And I don't think the individual should, in all honesty. And I think that there should be, and there are certain protections to the individual. I think under the First, I think under the Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment. I absolutely think that if an individual wants to go live out on 40, 50, 100 acres in the middle of nowhere, doesn't hurt nobody, doesn't cause nobody nothing.
They have a sign in their beginning of their property
need a sign
that says "fuck off."
So
by all means, and I think it should be neon with a bullet.
So if the ATF shows up at my door, says, "We believe that you have, a suppressor or whatever that may be illegal."
Like, cool. Did I file a stamp? Do you have a stamp number?
Exactly.
Do you?
No.
Yes or no?
Yeah, no. Of
No?
course not.
Then what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
You can turn right around and piss off. Go get you a warrant, and if you don't swear that you have a probable cause to search my property because you know or reasonably know that a crime's been committed, because I didn't file a stamp, so if I was a law-abiding citizen, which, you have no other reason to argue that I'm not, then you have no reasonable articulable
I filled out a
suspicion.
4473 for every firearm that I own. Obviously, I'm a law-abiding citizen.
You cannot articulate that I do or don't. Am I suspected of a crime? No? Okay, cool. Piss off. There's nothing against the law of telling an ATF officer, FBI officer, CIA, anything, police officer, your local sheriff, go fuck yourself.
Right.
In fact, it
That
is
is
100% legal
First
and
Amendment
backed
right.
by case law
Yes.
that you telling a police officer to go fuck themselves is a constitutionally protected right, and
Freedom
I
of speech.
encourage everyone to tell an officer to go fuck themselves. Because I'm sorry, and it really does piss me off. It really does, and I have some state trooper buddies. I've got sheriff buddies, wonderful human beings. I would kill for their families and not even bat a freaking eye. I really would. But the second they open their mouth and say law, I want to slap the shit out of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they went to 12 to 16 weeks at the police academy, and they're all John Law. I'm sorry, asshole, but I spent 8 goddamn years in school, in higher education, hundreds of thousands of dollars to understand what dominion and control means. And you're going to sit here and tell me that you know more than me? I got a sack you could suck on.
Do one thing for the listeners out here, for the viewers.
I'm sorry. I pissed all of you with sack to suck on.
Explain the difference between an ordinance and a law.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to
This
the 10th
goes
Amendment.
back to
10th Amendment.
the
State powers.
yes.
Police powers, state powers. I'm sorry, 9th Amendment. 9th Amendment's police powers. So an ordinance. All right, so the state, the way it's structured is you got the federal government, you got the state government, then you've got the local government, right? Your local government is your county. Below them is your municipality, right? They're the fourth in line of power, right? So your municipality has to abide by the 3 tiers above it in order to pass an ordinance that dictates your behavior, right? So your city council can pass a city ordinance that says X, Y, Z, so long as it falls in line with the local government, your county, your state, and the federal.
But the
right?
mob law still applies.
Huh?
The mob law still applies.
Mob laws?
So they can't say this is what's best for the people.
Well, you're talking like public policy.
For the most part, yes.
So they can articulate public policy dictates like, like spitting on the sidewalk, right? There's a lot of jurisdictions that say you can't spit on the sidewalk, right? For biological reasons, so on and so forth.
For bullshit.
Right, wrong, or indifferent.
But
I'm
it's-
just giving you an example of what.
I understand. But me would say, well, it's public property. If the public wants to spit on their property,
Right.
they should be allowed to spit on their
Right.
property.
You can write an ordinance that says that, but at the same point, if a city cop writes you a ticket, the same principles apply. The officer that wrote you a ticket is the witness to the crime per
Yes.
se, right? So whether it be a statute or ordinance, whatever, they have to prove. Now it's a civil matter at that point because it's not criminal because
Right.
it's not within the 13 criminal statutes.
But yet, if we're not there and we don't pay the fine, they can take us to jail.
Not necessarily. Depends on what it is.
It's called a bench warrant.
Huh?
A bench warrant. So if I don't
Well,
show
a
up
bench
to court,
warrant, yeah.
If I don't show up
you
to
had
court-
a judge tell you better show up to court.
if I don't show up to court for a speeding ticket, that speeding ticket, which is an ordinance, then turns into a arrestable offense. That's what I'm getting at.
under a bench warrant if you didn't show up to defend yourself.
But I got the bench warrant because I broke an ordinance, which then becomes an arrestable
Well,
offense.
so now what you're talking about? You're kind of splitting hairs, and you're taking.
But that's the law, right?
Well, no. You're splitting hairs and trying to call an orange an apple a pear tree, right? So, and that's what's so difficult about it, right? Because your common sense would dictate, right? Like, I broke an ordinance, whatever. It's negligence per se, right? It's a statute, you broke it. It's not like criminal negligence or something like that. It's
Let's make it basic. Seatbelt violation.
right. Seatbelt violation or speeding violation is negligence per se, right? There's a statute on it. You didn't follow the statute, and by the very nature of that statute, you didn't follow it, therefore you broke it, and therefore you're liable,
There's a fee.
right?
Unless
Unless, but then it goes back into that whole burden of proof thing. And under civil burden of proof is preponderance of the evidence, and that is such the lowest burden of proof that there is like you have to be like, did you do it? Did you? Oh, no. Well, I saw him do it. Oh, well, you saw him do it. Because you saw him do it, obviously there's enough probable cause to believe that he did it, and because there was enough probable cause to believe he did it, you did it. Now there are some very nuanced ways to get around that, but you got to be kind of creative in it. So, and it is so situation specific that it's hard to really talk about. And that's kind of what you when you hire an attorney, that's their job is, why you don't get into an argument with a lawyer? Because they can't tell the truth.
Yeah.
Why can't they tell the truth? Because their entire life is predicated on a lie.
Yeah.
And they can't blur the line because there is no line. Which is ironic because there's an ethical portion involved in there, and you're supposed to be ethical as an attorney. So do you lie? Technically, no. Because lying is bad. It's unethical. But if we spin it.
You tell the truth to your best ability.
No, you tell the truth. The best thing I ever heard is everything you say has to be the truth, but not everything true has to be said.
Makes sense.
But you can say the truth about a law, like, that doesn't necessarily pertain to the crime, but something that wasn't filed correctly, and still get off on the crime because the other party didn't do their job or due diligence in a certain area, or they crossed their boundary, and either way, even if the person was guilty, they still get off because
there's a violation of a technicality.
Yeah,
and I mean, and that goes to the benefit of the people, right? So the state is required to follow a certain, let's see the best way to say this. The state is required to follow a preordained set of rules. And if the state doesn't follow that set of rules, then it's presumed that they didn't do their due diligence or their job, and because they didn't do that, they can no longer pursue you. That's why we have like the statute of limitations, right? Right. So like let's say petty theft, right? Let's say you go to Walmart down here and you steal lip balm or a tube of toothpaste, right? Technically, it's theft, right? It's petty theft. It's under a certain amount, but nonetheless, it's theft. The state or the local government has 2 years to bring a suit against you for theft. If they don't bring that within 2 years, they cannot bring it against you, right? So there's this presumption that you knew about it or you should have known about it and you could have acted, but you didn't act, right? So the same thing applies in civil. It's called the theory of laches, right? And the theory of laches is like a species of laws, and it kind of breaks down like this. I violate your rights. You may or may not know about it. If you do know about it, you may or may not do something about it. If you do something about it, you may or may not have the intestinal or testicular fortitude to see through to an end product to make sure that I don't repetitively violate your rights, right? So the state can violate your rights, and it's up to you, the individual. And it's kind of like what we talked about last time with when you get arrested, right? You must say, I invoke my right to remain silent, and I want my attorney. Yes. If you don't say those two things, the interrogating officer, till the freaking cows come home, man.
So one of the issues with that, though, is it costs money. And then you said that the state, you can't really get any money from the state if they violate.
What?
Right.
You can, that gets super tricky. So under the 11th Amendment, right, immunity,
Yeah.
and that's presumed to be like an officer, right? And those are the ones that usually get hit the most, like city police officers or the county sheriff or something like that. Stadies, not so much, but the lower municipalities or the lower law enforcement agencies, if they violate your rights, you can pierce the 11th Amendment. The 11th Amendment is not this impenetrable force field to sovereignty. Like case in point, and I've heard about this. Well, I can't say that I heard about it. I've heard alleged stories of officers pulling young women over and saying, "Hey, you do me a favor, I let you go," right? And then the young lady does the officer a favor, if you will, and then the officer goes, "Yeah, still getting that ticket." The 11th Amendment is not going to protect you, right? Because you didn't do what your scope of employment allowed you to do, right? So the 11th Amendment will protect like an umbrella, if you will. So long as you, like if you're in the rain, right, you're standing under an umbrella, you're not going to get wet. But if you hold the umbrella stationary and you go out to the perimeter of the umbrella, your shoulder's going to get wet, right? It's because you were outside of that umbrella of protection.
Gotcha.
Right? And it's kind of the same thing that applies there.
Yeah.
If you're going to pull somebody over or, you're going to execute a search warrant and, like a case in point, a couple of months ago, I was working a case in school for a marijuana bust. And they were using the National Guard helicopters. And they were flying over and they spotted the marijuana field, right? Cool, great, grand. The open field doctrines allows you to see it from the air because the idea is if it's not around the curtilage of your home, there's no expectation of privacy in an open field because you can see an open field from the road. And if you can see it from the road, it's fair game from the sky, right? The only exception is the, intimate areas around the home. So within 50, 100 yards, something like that. What happened here was the helicopter pilots called the Stadies. Well, the Stady went to go get the warrant based on the information that the helicopter pilot gave him, but then communicated to the other people on the ground that they were in the pursuit of getting the warrant. So the people on the ground said, "Oh, well, we're going to get one anyway. Let's go." It's a done deal. We're going to get it. Let's go do it. And they, raided the guy's house. But they raided the guy's house without a warrant. So that's where the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine comes in. And so it's basically kind of coming back on those protections of the individual. Even though you knew a warrant was forthcoming, you didn't have it. Therefore, everything you found in connection with your search was therefore illegal, and you now have nothing. Right, so it's that protection of the individual that you have to have, that we should all want, right? So the state, whether it be municipal, local, state, federal, right? There are checks to their power. You just have to have, one, the knowledge, or two, the attorney who has the knowledge who can advocate for your position the best that they can. But they have to know that nuanced stuff, and or you as a pro se guy have to know where to find that information so that you can timely exercise your rights, because it's all about timing.
Interesting. Now there's a lot to be said about that.
It's kind of messed up. I'm not,
because I have barriers around everything that can be seen from the road. So
right, and so the open fields doctrines, it's an interesting thing because if you were to go under the the old, well, it's not really old because that's the way it is, right? So when your property goes from God's taint to the devil's taint, so above and below to the end of the universe. It's your property. However, there are some leniencies to that, right? You can fly over it because, well, yes, it's your property. It's not causing you any damage. But if you can see it from the air, is it causing you any damage either? Now, like I said, the curtilage of the home, like that 50, 100 yards, and it may be a little bit more than that, but I'm kind of rusty on that.
Yeah, I live all over my property though.
Well, so
That's my home.
So under the Fourth Amendment, your home is, and the law in every court in this country, every judge is unanimous on the fact that your home, state, get the hell out of. You got no goddamn business in there. Be gone. Unless you can prove, or at least show me reasonable suspicion that they've committed a crime or they're in the commission of a crime that needs to be stopped, that you need to go in there to stop it. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the only time, and that's perfectly okay. And everybody who understands Fourth Amendment is A-okay with it. Right? If they're touching children in their home, everybody's like,
yeah,
no, we're done with that bullshit right
but
now.
what you see as a crime and what they see as a crime could be something totally different.
Yes, but that also goes back to we as the American people are in direct control of the people who decide what that is. Right? Our lawmakers.
We used to be.
No, we still are.
Well, there was this last 4 years we could talk about.
Well, not since 1913 though, because we used to have veto power through our dollar, but not anymore since the Federal Reserve Act was signed. Now we don't have that veto power, so what's to say? They just take money and create laws and do whatever they want now.
Yeah, but it's the American people have also acquiesced to that by not getting rid of the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers.
Yes, because American people have become pussies. That's what's happened.
They become I don't agree with that. What I think happened.
It's normalcy bias.
Well,
they got comfortable.
It's acquiescence by silence, if anything. But the federal government has played such a heavy hand in making it to the point where, as a man, you can't go out and provide for your family anymore alone.
Yeah.
Right? You need your wife to work. You need your children in school. You have to have a 2-income family. Look at home
a lot
prices.
of marketing.
It's a lot of marketing, but a lot of it's been happening since the 70s.
Well, it's been happening since 1913.
Well,
that's right after 1913 was the feminist movement, which was
right up to the 1920.
Yeah. Which made it
and I'll
to where they would.
I'll acquiesce to that one. I think that the most damning evidence started in 1970, late 60s, early 70s, with the destruction of our cities and our inner cities.
Yeah.
That's when it became, and it may have started earlier than that, but that was the line of demarcation, if you will.
Government funding.
Where you really saw the destruction of the nuclear family was in the 70s.
Yes.
And it has only escalated astronomically since then.
But the
Women,
ideas
you don't
had to
need
be
your
formed.
husband.
Yeah, the ideas had to be formed before that, and that was the 20s.
I absolutely agree. I don't have enough knowledge to speak on what happened to that. All I can speak on is what I see the line of demarcation as, is like, this is where it happened. And I absolutely agree. Like, it couldn't have happened but for those ideologies being put in place prior to. Right? It's just not possible when you look at, society forming over, 2,000, 5,000 years, like how people did it. You read Machiavelli and you say, okay, this is what they do. Like, those principles have been put in place for a reason, and people study them for a reason because they're effective.
So I'm bringing a movie into this, Midway.
Love movies.
It's called Midway. It's on Netflix.
Midway?
Yes. Have you
I've
seen
not
it?
seen it.
Oh my goodness.
Don't ruin it.
I don't ruin it. I won't ruin it. I'm going to say this though.
I'll kick you in the kneecap.
when you watch it, you see the men and you read about the men at the end, and it hits you like that is what we are missing, because it was a different time. We're talking 1942, 1943.
Yeah.
When you see the character of those men versus what we have to deal with, this bullshit, they, them, whatever the fuck they think they are, when you compare and contrast the character between them and what we have to deal with, you understand that is what we're missing. And it's an eye-opener. Like, you know it.
Yeah.
But when you watch that movie, and then you look at
see it.
it's like, wow, how in the span of 80 years did we go from this to these fucking bitch-ass sons of bitches that just want to cry about everything? I understand. That's your wife. Hi, Hannah.
Not my wife.
I know.
My wife
I'm not blaming her for
my wife
everything.
is not the problem, and
I am not blaming her for everything for the last 80 years.
You want to do that? By all means, I'm going to step the hell out of the way.
Pretty sure she
luck
can make
with
some DNA appear somewhere.
Yes.
You don't
yes.
I
want
married her because she could kill me and get away with
Look,
it.
I was going to say.
Like that is.
There was a time when you could ask Siri, "Hey Siri, where do I dump a body?" And it might tell you, "Do you want a swamp or do you want a river or do you want a lake?" Yeah. No. Her, she's.
Nah, she
Nothing
doesn't ask questions. She just
It's-
gets the job done.
Wait, you're looking for who? I don't think they ever existed.
Yeah. No, I mean it's technology and it's super,
Yes,
it's super
that's
crazy.
well. I think it's a mix of technology, and I think it's a mix of parenting. You have to blame the parents.
Well, so little side story here
Sorta.
for a minute. 2 weeks ago, I think I went to my sister-in-law's house. Her oldest turned 21, so they were having a birthday party for her.
Okay.
And I'm wearing pretty much what I'm wearing now, right? Like worn out work boots and
Boots, jeans.
I was wearing a hoodie, but it was my dad's business hoodie, right? He's a plumber. So, had his company logo on it. Super awesome, comfortable hoodie that I
Right.
love to wear out. And, not thinking anything of it. Here I am studying for finals in one of my last semesters of law school, burning the midnight oil every day, trying to remember every minute detail, right? So it's the SEC championship game.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm drinking a beer and not thinking anything of it. I'm talking to my brother-in-law and we're having a good time. And her boyfriend comes in and he was like, "Hey, you a plumber?" I'm like, I was, once a long time ago. He was like, "Oh, I just, I recognize your hoodie." He's like, where do you work out of?" I was like, "I go to school in Birmingham." And it didn't dawn on me that, my dad's company logo in, the town that my dad operates in
Yeah.
would be recognized, which I thought was kind of cool for my dad. He worked his butt off to get that, so I thought it was pretty cool. But this kid was, he worked for a rival company. He's like, "Oh, I recognize it." He's like, "I work for this other plumbing company." I was like, "Oh, man, that's cool." And, the conversation kind of speared off of that for a little bit. And my brother-in-law asked me, he's like, "When are you done with school?" I was like, "Oh, in about a year." And he's like, the same kid, he goes, "Well, what are you in school for?" I was like, "Oh, I'm in law school." You could see this kid's mind explode, right? Because we went from, I was a plumber to now I'm in law school. And he was like, "Whoa, how do you get there?" It was like a lot of hard work. Like, you read a lot. I have a brain. You use it. But it was one of those things, right? So he's like this roughneck kind of guy, and he's like, "This is what a man is." You put on your work boots and you go out and you do a trade. It's like, cool. I respect that all day long. But kind of keeping yourself down to a kind of humbling yourself a little bit. It's like, you don't have to be that quintessential man,
Right.
to also be a man. Like you want to go plumb a house, like, let's go all day long. But at the end of the day, there's so many people that go, "This is what a man is," and it's like, men come in all shapes and sizes.
See, I
Well,
think what you see in that movie, the difference between now and what you see the character of them, and it all comes back to one thing: honor.
Oh, I agree with that.
Because you can be a plumber and you're honorable. You can be a lawyer, you're honorable. You can be an attorney, you're honorable. You can be a construction worker, you're honorable. But these days, that doesn't exist.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with your word, right? You say you're going to do something, you do
it.
Yeah.
Period.
So I would say what makes a man is character.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like what kind of character they have.
Well, and back then, you're like your word more often than not was the only thing.
That's what you had.
Yes.
Like if you know that saying, a man is only as good as his word.
Right.
That's because it was shameful to be otherwise.
Right.
Right. And we've taken the shame out of everything now.
Yeah.
Now it's okay to be
not follow
whatever
through.
or to do whatever or because do what you want. Do what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
I mean, we had this one guy that said he'll be here on Mead Talk like 2 or 3 times and kept rescheduling. And I can't remember his name. What was his name?
It started with a B, didn't it?
Yeah. Sit and spin. Right.
I could have swore this one day he was talking about honor and keeping your word or something.
Here I am. No, I mean, like, case in point, right there, right? It's like I said, I'd show up, and then, unfortunately, things happened that were well beyond my control.
You had more important things to do.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you don't have to tell us twice.
Yeah.
But guys, it has been 2 hours
Already?
Oh, wow.
It's been,
Jeez, I thought we just got started.
I know, right?
I thought we were going like 20 minutes. It has been 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's been 2 hours. So, with that, I think we'll start on this 14th Amendment. We really didn't even scratch the surface on it. We didn't even get into it. So we'll start on the 14th Amendment next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's pretty available now, so.
Sweet.
Yeah, in about 6 months to a year, I'll be available. It's going to be a good time. We'll make it happen before then,
Sweet.
for sure.
Sweet. Well, on that note. I know. Yeah, and honestly, I think. Oh, geez. Speaker cable. Yeah, I think that eventually